At 64 years old, on my birthday, my son, Frankie, grabbed my cell phone and smashed it to pieces on the floor. Then, with the same coldness, he called the police and told them I had attacked him. His wife, Isabella, not only backed up the lie, but also signed a false report accusing me of domestic violence. Listen to the story to the end and tell me what you would do in my place. I didn't scream. I didn't raise a hand. I just did one thing they did not expect. 3 months later, Frankie and Isabella were in a total panic, and my daughter-in-law was frantically separating papers and documents, searching for something they wouldn't find, but that comes later. Let me tell you how it all started. My name is Eleanor. I'm 64 years old, and my whole life I believed that being a good mother meant giving everything for my son. How wrong I was. Frankie arrived at my house that afternoon with Isabella and their 2 kids. It was my birthday. I had prepared everything with so much care. The table was set with my best china. I had cooked his favorite dish from when he was a child. I even bought that expensive wine he likes so much. But since he walked through the door, Frankie had an aggressive attitude. Isabella didn't even greet me. She sat on my couch as if she owned the place, checking her phone while her kids ran all over the living room without any control. I asked Frankie to control the kids because they were knocking my decorations to the floor. His response was explosive. He yelled that it wasn't my house to give orders, that he paid the bills, that I was a useless old woman, that I didn't know anything about raising kids. His words hurt me more than any physical blow. But when I told him to lower his voice because we had guests, that's when he completely lost control. If you're watching this video, please like, subscribe to the channel, and tell me in the comments where you're watching my story of revenge from. I want to know how far it has reached. He came at me with his eyes full of rage and snatched the phone from my hands. I had taken it out to record his behavior. Something told me I would need proof later. Frankie took my phone and slammed it to the floor so hard it shattered into pieces. Then he pointed his finger at me and screamed that I was a crazy old lady, that I was losing my mind, that I needed to be institutionalized. Instead of calming her husband down, Isabella got up from the couch and started screaming at me too. She said I was a toxic mother-in-law, that I was always causing problems, that Frankie was right to be fed up with me. The children cried in a corner, terrified by their parents shouting. I was paralyzed. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. This was the son I had raised alone after his father abandoned us. The boy I read stories to every night, whom I took to the hospital countless times when he got sick, for whom I paid for college by working double shifts at the factory. And there he was, destroying my birthday. Humiliating me in front of the whole family. But what came next was even worse. Frankie took out his phone and called the police. With a calm, fake voice, he told them his mother was having a violent episode, that she had threatened his family, that they needed urgent help. Lie after lie, Isabella took the phone and confirmed the entire false story. She even added details that never happened, saying I had tried to hit the children. When the police arrived, Frankie and Isabella already had their version of events prepared. They said I had had a fit of rage, that I had broken my own phone, that I had threatened them with a kitchen knife. All lies. But the 2 of them spoke with so much conviction, with so much detail, that the officers started to believe them. Isabella even cried while telling her false version. She said she was afraid for her children, that I was unpredictable, that she had noticed strange changes in my behavior lately. I tried to explain my side, but my voice trembled with emotion. The police saw an agitated elderly woman in front of a young couple who seemed very concerned for my well-being. Frankie suggested they take me for a psychiatric evaluation. He said he had noticed symptoms of dementia, that I sometimes didn't recognize him, that he had found the stove on several times for no reason. More lies. Isabella signed the report, backing up every word of her husband's. She wrote that I had been aggressive, that I had screamed threats, that they had only come for my birthday to try to help me, and that I had reacted with violence. The humiliation was total. There I was in my own house, on my birthday, being treated like a criminal by my own son. The guests had left in silence, embarrassed by the scene. My neighbors came out to their windows to see the spectacle. The whole block saw me being interrogated by the police, while Frankie and Isabella acted like concerned victims. That night, after everyone left, I was left alone in my shattered home. The pieces of my phone were still on the floor. The food had grown cold on the table, and the gifts I had prepared for my grandchildren remained unopened. I sat on my bed and cried until I had no more tears. But in the midst of that profound pain, something began to awaken inside me. A strength I didn't know I had, because Frankie and Isabella didn't know something very important. They didn't know the secret I had kept all these years, a secret that was about to change everything. I truly wonder if you were in my place, what would you do? Would you choose to be quiet to maintain peace, or would you dare to face everything to reclaim your voice? I want to know your opinion because every story is like a candle that can light the way for someone else. The day after the birthday disaster, Frankie came to my house with a fake smile and a bouquet of cheap flowers from the supermarket, as if nothing had happened, as if he hadn't humiliated me in front of the whole family. "Mom, forgive me for yesterday. I was stressed from work," he said with that syrupy voice he used when he was a child and had done something naughty. But he wasn't a child anymore. He was a 38-year-old man who had called the police on his own mother. Isabella stayed in the car. She didn't even have the decency to come down to apologize. I could see her from the window, putting on makeup in the visor mirror, as if she were getting ready for a romantic date instead of coming to apologize. "Frankie, you broke my phone," I said calmly. My voice didn't tremble like it had the night before. Something had changed in me during those hours of sleeplessness. "I'll buy you another one, Mom, a better one. You know I sometimes lose my temper, but you were upset too. The kids got really scared." The kids got scared? He was seriously blaming me for scaring his kids when he was the one who screamed like a maniac and destroyed my phone. "And the false police report your wife signed?" Frankie shrugged with a casualness that chilled me to the bone. "It was necessary, Mom. You were very agitated. The police needed to understand the situation. Isabella just wanted to protect the family." Protect the family from me, their own mother-in-law. During the following weeks, Frankie and Isabella established a perfect routine of manipulation. They came to my house every 2 or 3 days, always with different excuses. They needed me to babysit. Isabella had a doctor's appointment. Frankie had to work late. But each visit was a new humiliation. Isabella would check my refrigerator and comment that the food was expired, even though I had just done the groceries. Frankie would go through my mail without permission, saying he was concerned about my finances. "Mom, this electricity bill is very high. Are you leaving the lights on again?" he would ask me, with that condescending tone you use with a small child. "What retirement are you talking about? You don't even have a pension," Isabella told me one day when I mentioned I was thinking of traveling. "You'd better accept reality. You're not at an age for those fantasies anymore." They would sit in my living room like homeowners, deciding what shows to watch on my television, eating my food, using my bathroom without even asking permission. Isabella went so far as to bring her own towels because she said mine smelled weird. Frankie started commenting to the neighbors that he was worried about my mental health. He told Mrs. Miller next door that he had noticed changes in my behavior, that I sometimes forgot important things, that he found the stove on for no reason. All lies. But Mrs. Miller started to look at me with pity when I went out to sweep the sidewalk. She even asked if I needed help remembering to take my medicine. What medicine? I was perfectly healthy, but Frankie had planted the seed of doubt throughout the neighborhood. Isabella was even more cruel in her methods. When we were alone, she would say things like, "Eleanor, you're not young anymore. Frankie has his own family now. You can't keep clinging to him like you did when he was a child. Oh, you should consider moving into a retirement home. There are very nice places where you would be better cared for." A retirement home. Me, who had worked my whole life, who had raised my son a lullason, who had kept my house impeccable for decades. But what hurt the most was seeing how Frankie treated his own children in front of me. He would yell at them for anything, punish them for behaving like normal children. And when I tried to intervene, he would tell me to stay out of their upbringing. "You raised one son badly, Mom. Let me raise mine right," he told me one afternoon when I tried to defend my 5-year-old grandson who had just spilled a little juice. That phrase went through my heart. Raised badly. I had sacrificed my youth, my dreams, my opportunities to remarry, all to give Frankie the best possible life. After his father abandoned us when he was 8 years old, I worked double shifts at the textile factory. I came home with cracked hands and swollen feet, but I always had the energy to help him with his homework, to take him to the park on Sundays, to cook his favorite food. I sold my jewelry to pay for his English classes. I took out loans to finance his college. I rejected suitors because Frankie told me he didn't like them, that no man was good enough for his mom. And now, after all that, he was telling me I had raised him badly. That night, after they left, I sat in the kitchen where I had prepared thousands of dinners for Frankie. I remembered all the times I had cried in silence when he was a teenager and screamed that he hated me, all the times I had worked while sick so as not to lose the salary we needed. I remembered the day he graduated from college and hugged me, crying, telling me I was the best mother in the world, that everything he had achieved was thanks to me. Where had that grateful son gone? When had he become this cruel man who treated me like a burden? But as I cried in that silent kitchen, something began to stir in me. A memory that I had kept deep in my mind all these years, because Frankie and Isabella didn't know the truth about my real situation. They didn't know where the few luxuries I had in the house really came from. They didn't know why I never really worried about money, even though I pretended I did. They didn't know the secret I had jealously guarded for decades, a secret that was about to change the entire game. The humiliation reached its peak on a Tuesday afternoon. Frankie arrived with Isabella and 2 large suitcases, without warning, without asking. They simply announced they were going to stay at my house for a few days because they were having problems with the landlord of their apartment. "Mom, it's temporary, just until we find something better," Frankie told me, while Isabella was already arranging their things in my master bedroom. In my bedroom. "Eleanor, I hope you don't mind. We need the large room because we have more clothes," Isabella told me, with that fake smile I already knew so well. They sent me to sleep in the small room that had been Frankie's when he was a child, the room where I had sewn until late hours to earn extra money, where I had cried in silence every night after his father abandoned us. But the worst part wasn't sleeping in a smaller room. The worst part was becoming a stranger in my own house. Isabella rearranged my kitchen to her liking, moved my pots, changed the location of my spices, threw out food that she said was expired, even though I had just bought it. Frankie set up his computer in my living room and worked from there, occupying all the space with his papers and cables. The children ran all over the house, shouting and breaking things while Isabella watched television without paying them any attention. When I tried to calm them down, they would say I wasn't their real grandmother, that their mom had told them I was just the lady who took care of Daddy when he was little. The lady who took care of Daddy. That's what Isabella had told them I was. One night, while I was preparing dinner for all of them, as if I were the domestic worker of my own home, I heard Frankie talking on the phone in my bedroom. The door was ajar, and his words reached me clearly. "Yeah, Carlos, we're already living here. The old lady is getting worse every day. Tell me whether you have parents, grandparents, or older family members who deserve more respect than they currently receive from their families. Alternatively, tell me if you yourself are going through a situation in which you're not appreciated as much as you truly deserve. She can't take care of herself anymore. No, she doesn't have anything valuable, just this old house. But when something happens, at least we'll already be settled here." He was talking about my death. My own son was planning my death, waiting for it, as if it were a long-term investment. Isabella laughed from the other side of the room. "Tell Carlos I already checked all the house papers. There's nothing complicated. When the time comes, it will be easy to make the transfer." What papers had she checked? When had she rummaged through my personal documents? That same night, I confronted them. I went into my bedroom where they were lying down watching television like royalty in my own bed. "Frankie, what papers did Isabella check?" "Oh, Mom, don't start with your paranoia. Isabella was just organizing your documents, which you had all disorganized. We found the deeds to the house, your old will, things like that." "My will?" "Yeah, that paper where you leave everything in my name. It's okay, Mom. Don't worry. Even if it's a little outdated, it works." Isabella smiled from the bed. "Eleanor, we also found your bank statements. You have very few savings, but don't worry. When Frankie inherits the house, we'll sell it and move you to a place more appropriate for your age." Sell my house, move me to a place appropriate for my age. "This is my house," I told them in a voice I didn't recognize as my own. "For now, Mom, but you have to be realistic. You can't keep up with such a big house anymore. It's too much for you." Frankie got up from the bed and came closer to me with that condescending smile I hated so much. "Look, Mom, we've been thinking. There's a very nice retirement home on the outskirts of the city. They have gardens, activities, people your age. You would be much better off there. And we could stay here taking care of the house until we sell it," Isabella added. "It would be the best for everyone." The best for everyone, except for me. That night, I couldn't sleep. I stayed awake in the small room, listening to Frankie's snores in my bed, seeing the shadows of the trees that I had planted 20 years ago move on the walls that I had painted with my own hands. I had bought this house with the money from years of work in the factory. Every brick, every tile, every window had been paid for with my sweat, and now my own son wanted to sell it to get rid of me. But while I was lying there, I remembered something I had forgotten for years, something I had kept in the deepest part of my memory because it was too painful to remember. The day Frankie turned 18, his biological father appeared at our door after 10 years of absence. He was sick. He needed money. He wanted to meet his son. Frankie received him with open arms, as if those 10 years of abandonment had not existed. That man stayed in our house for 3 months, filling Frankie's head with lies about me. He told him I had kept him away from him, that I was a bitter woman who hadn't known how to forgive. Lies. When he finally left, he took the savings I had put aside for Frankie's college, and my son defended him. He told me his father had a right to that money, that I was selfish for not wanting to help him. That's when something between Frankie and me broke forever. But I kept fighting for him because he was my son. I worked double shifts to recover the stolen money. I took out loans. I went into debt up to my neck, and now, 25 years later, Frankie was doing the exact same thing to me as his father had. He was using me, manipulating me, stealing my peace and my home. But this time, it would be different because Frankie and Isabella didn't know something very important about me. They didn't know that all these years I had been preparing for this moment. They didn't know about the conversations I had had with my lawyer, Carlos, months ago. They didn't know about the documents I had signed in secret, and most importantly, they didn't know about the inheritance I had received from my sister Esther 5 years ago. An inheritance I never mentioned to anyone, which I deposited in an account they were completely unaware of. Frankie thought I was a poor and vulnerable old woman. What a surprise he was going to get. The final straw came on a Friday night. Frankie had invited his friends to my house without asking. 8 people arrived with beers and loud music, as if it were their private home. I was in the kitchen preparing dinner when I heard Frankie talking to his guests in the living room. His words froze my blood. "Yeah, it's my mom's house, but it's practically mine now. The old lady is losing her mind. She can't live alone anymore. Soon we're going to put her in a home, and I'll take care of everything." His friends laughed. One of them said, "Good for you, Frankie. This house is in a very expensive area. It's going to make you good money when you sell it." Exactly. Isabella already found the perfect retirement home for her. It's cheap, and it's far away. That way she won't be a bother. My hands trembled as I cut the vegetables. A cheap and far-away retirement home, so I wouldn't be a bother. Isabella appeared in the kitchen with a poisonous smile. "Eleanor, can you prepare some food for Frankie's guests? And please don't get involved in the conversation. It's adult talk." Adult talk. As if I were a child. As if I weren't the owner of the house where they were celebrating. That night, after the guests left, leaving my living room a mess, I locked myself in the small room and took out a box I had stored at the back of the closet, a box I hadn't opened in years. Inside were the letters my sister Esther had written to me before she died. The last letter had a phrase that now took on a special meaning. "Eleanor, save this money for when you truly need it, and believe me, you'll know exactly when that moment comes." My sister, Esther, had been a very smart woman. She never married, never had children, but she built a real estate empire that no one in the family knew about. When she died, she left me an inheritance of $2 million that I deposited in a secret account. I had lied to Frankie about that inheritance. I told him Esther had only left me some old furniture and family memories. He didn't even ask for more details, too busy with his own life to be interested in his single aunt. That inheritance was my secret card, my escape plan, and the time had come to use it. The next day, Saturday, Frankie and Isabella left early with the kids. They said they were going to the park, but by the number of suitcases they took, it was obvious they were going to stay at a friend's house for the whole weekend. Perfect. It was exactly what I needed. I called my lawyer, Carlos, the same one who had drafted my will years ago. Carlos was a trustworthy man, discreet, and above all, someone who perfectly understood toxic family dynamics. "Carlos, I need to see you urgently. It's time to activate the plan we discussed months ago." "Eleanor, are you sure? Once we start, there's no turning back." "I've never been more sure of anything in my life." We met at his office that same afternoon. Carlos had prepared all the documents we had discussed months ago when I began to suspect Frankie's true intentions. "The new will is ready," Carlos told me while reviewing the papers. "Frankie is completely out of the inheritance. The house and all your assets go to a charitable foundation you choose. I also have here the revocation of the previous will and the bank account documents. Everything is in order. The money from your sister's inheritance is protected in an account that only you can manage. Frankie has no legal access to anything." I signed each document with a sense of liberation I hadn't felt in years. For the first time in a long time, I had control of my own life. "Carlos, there's something else I want you to do." "Tell me." "I want you to investigate Frankie and Isabella's finances. I have a suspicion they are in more serious financial trouble than they admit." Carlos smiled. "I'm one step ahead of you, Eleanor. When you told me about their behavior, I made some discreet inquiries. They're broke. They owe 3 months of rent. They have credit card debts for more than $50,000, and the bank is about to repossess their car." Everything made sense now. The urgency to move into my house, the rush to institutionalize me, the comments about selling the property. It wasn't just cruelty. It was economic desperation. "That's why they're so anxious to get rid of you," Carlos continued. "They need your house to save their financial situation. And what would happen if they found out they're not going to inherit anything? They would go into a total panic. They would probably try to manipulate or pressure you to change the will. That's why I recommend you keep this a secret until the right moment." I returned home that night with a sense of power I hadn't experienced in decades. Frankie and Isabella were still out. My house was silent, and for the first time in months, I could sit in my own living room without anyone bothering me. But my peace didn't last long. On Sunday night, they returned with an even more aggressive attitude than before. "Mom, we've been thinking," Frankie began as he served himself a plate of the food I had prepared. "We think it's time for you to make an adult decision about your future." Isabella sat next to me with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Eleanor, we visited a beautiful retirement home. It has gardens, activities, 24-hour nurses. It would be perfect for you, and we could stay here taking care of the house," Frankie added. "It would be temporary, of course, until we sell it and buy something smaller where you can live comfortably." I remained silent, staring at them. They interpreted my silence as their opportunity. "The best thing is for you to move next week," Isabella continued. "We already spoke with the Homes Administration. They have a room available next week." "Yeah, Mom. It's time. You can't keep living in denial." Frankie stood up and put his hand on my shoulder with a false tenderness that nauseated me. "It's going to be the best for everyone, Mom. You'll be better cared for, and we'll have the peace of mind knowing you're safe." That night, while they celebrated their future plan to get rid of me in my bedroom, I stayed awake planning my revenge. Because Frankie and Isabella had just made their biggest mistake. They had completely underestimated me. On Monday morning, while Frankie and Isabella were sleeping in my bed, after another night of celebrating their future without me, I made the most important decision of my life. It was time to leave, but not as they expected. I waited until they left the house. Frankie had a work meeting, and Isabella took the kids to school. I had about 3 hours to execute my plan. I called Carlos from the landline in the kitchen. "It's time. I need you to come with the truck we discussed." "Are you completely sure, Eleanor?" "I've never been more sure of anything in my life." While I waited for Carlos, I began to pack my most valuable things. Not the old clothes I wore when Frankie and Isabella were home, but my good clothes, the ones I saved for special occasions, important documents, my mother's jewelry, family photographs from when Frankie was little and still loved me. I also packed something they would never expect me to take, the recordings. For the past few weeks, I had been secretly recording all the conversations where Frankie and Isabella talked about getting rid of me, about selling my house, about institutionalizing me in a retirement home. My old phone had a recording app that they didn't know existed. I had recorded Frankie's phone conversations with his friends, Isabella's cruel comments about my age and my supposed dementia, even the conversation where they planned the transfer of the property. Carlos arrived punctually with a large truck and 2 trusted employees. "Everything ready?" "Everything ready." We loaded my belongings in silence. I didn't take much, just the essentials and what had sentimental value. I left behind the furniture, the china, everything Frankie and Isabella had been mentally cataloging as part of their future inheritance. "Where are we going?" Carlos asked me as he closed the door of my house for the last time. "To the place you reserved for me." Carlos smiled. He had rented a beautiful apartment in the most exclusive area of the city, a place with 24-hour security, a panoramic view, and all the luxury I had denied myself for years to give Frankie the best possible education. It was time to live for myself. The apartment was perfect, spacious, bright, with a terrace where I could have coffee while watching the sunrise. For the first time in decades, I had a space that was completely mine, where no one yelled at me, where no one treated me like a burden. Carlos helped me get settled, and then we sat in the new living room to plan the next phase. "Frankie and Isabella are going to panic when they realize you're gone," he told me while reviewing the legal documents. "Let them panic. They deserve it. They're probably going to try to find you. They'll call the police. They'll say you're lost, that you have dementia. I have the recordings to prove I'm perfectly sane, and you, as my lawyer, can confirm my mental state." Carlos nodded. "When do you want me to start the next phase of the plan?" "Let them suffer for a few days. Let them get desperate looking for me. Let them realize what they have lost." That night, from my new terrace, I called the landline of my old house. Frankie answered on the second ring. His voice sounded desperate. "Mom, where are you? We've been looking for you everywhere. We're so worried." "I'm fine, Frankie." "Where are you? Come home immediately. Isabella is crying. The kids miss you." Lies. The kids barely spoke to me when I lived there. "I'm not coming back, Frankie." "What do you mean you're not coming back? That's your house." "It was my house. Now it's different." "Mom, you're confused. You have to come back. You can't live alone. You don't have money. You have nowhere to go." "You're wrong about everything, son." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. I could hear Isabella talking in the background, probably telling him what to say. "Look, Mom, if you're upset about the retirement home, we can talk about it. It doesn't have to be immediately." "It's not about the retirement home, Frankie. It's about respect." "We respect you, Mom. We've always respected you." "Breaking my phone is respect? Calling the police is respect? Signing a false report is respect?" "Mom, we already talked about that. It was a misunderstanding. Planning to sell my house without my permission is a misunderstanding?" Another silence, this time longer. "I don't know what you're talking about." "I have recordings, Frankie. I have every conversation where you plan to get rid of me recorded." "That's impossible. Your phone was broken." "I have more than one phone, son." I hung up before he could respond. 5 minutes later, the phone rang again, but I didn't answer. It rang 20 more times that night, but I was busy enjoying my new freedom. The next day, Carlos brought me interesting news. Frankie went to the police station to report you as a missing person. He says you have mental problems and are in danger. And what did they tell him? That you are an independent, elderly adult in full possession of her mental faculties, that you have the right to live wherever you want, and that if he's so worried, he can hire a private detective to find you. I laughed for the first time in months. And Isabella? Isabella went to your old house and went through everything. She was looking for something, probably financial documents or the will, but she didn't find anything important because we have it all here. Perfect. Eleanor, there's something else you should know. Frankie called the bank asking about your accounts. He wanted to know if you had money saved somewhere. And what did they tell him? Nothing. He's not an authorized family member, but it worries me that he's so desperate to find your financial resources. Let him be desperate. Soon he's going to discover exactly what my financial situation is. It was time to move on to the next phase of the plan. It was time for Frankie and Isabella to meet the real Eleanor. I decided it was time to make my first public appearance. Carlos had gotten me an appointment at the most exclusive real estate agency in the city, where I wanted to buy a new house. But before that, I needed to completely change my image. I went to the most expensive beauty salon in the area. I got my hair cut, a manicure, a pedicure, and asked to have my makeup done as if I were going to a gala. Then I went to the most elegant boutique and bought a burgundy dress that cost more than Frankie earned in a month. When I looked at myself in the mirror, I didn't recognize the woman who was looking back at me. It wasn't the tired, elderly woman I had been for years. It was an elegant, self-confident woman with money and power. The appointment at the real estate agency was at 3 in the afternoon. I arrived in a luxury taxi, got out with all the elegance in the world, and walked in as if I owned the place. The real estate agent, a young man named Antonio, greeted me with that professional smile they reserve for important clients. Mrs. Eleanor, it's a pleasure to meet you. I understand you're interested in our premium properties. That's right. I'm looking for something large with a garden in the best area of the city. Price is not an issue. Antonio showed me several catalogs of houses that cost between $500,000 and $1 million. Beautiful houses with pools, huge gardens, multiple rooms. This one is perfect, I said, pointing to a beautiful colonial house with a lake view. When can I see it? Of course, ma'am, but I would need to verify your purchasing power before scheduling the visit. It's company protocol. Of course. I took out the bank statement that Carlos had prepared for me from my purse. Antonio read it, and his eyes widened like saucers. Mrs. Eleanor, this is more than enough. When would you like to see the property? Right now, if possible. While Antonio made the calls to coordinate the immediate visit, I heard familiar voices at the entrance of the real estate agency. My heart sped up. Frankie and Isabella had just walked in. They looked desperate. Isabella had deep, dark circles under her eyes, and Frankie was unshaven, as if he hadn't slept in days. They had come to ask about the value of my old house, probably to find out how much money they could get from selling it. They hadn't seen me yet. They were talking to the receptionist, explaining that they wanted to appraise a property for an urgent sale. We need to sell fast, I heard Isabella say. It's a complicated family situation. I decided it was the perfect time for my grand reveal. I got up from my seat and walked toward them with all the elegance that my new dress and new confidence allowed me. Hello, Frankie. Hello, Isabella. They turned and stared at me as if they had seen a ghost. The transformation was so radical that it took them several seconds to recognize me. Mom, Frankie stammered. What What are you doing here? The same as you, I imagine. Talking about properties. Isabella recovered from the shock first. Eleanor, we've been looking for you everywhere. We're so worried. Where have you been? At my new apartment. It's beautiful. You should visit one day. Your new apartment? Frankie seemed confused. With what money? With my money, son. What money? You don't have any money. Your bank account barely has a few thousand. Antonio came over at that moment with a huge smile. Mrs. Eleanor, the owner confirmed the visit for right now. Are you ready to see your new $800,000 house? The silence that followed was so deep that you could hear the office's air conditioner. Frankie and Isabella looked at me with their mouths open. 800,000? Isabella whispered. It's a significant investment. I told her calmly, but I have more than enough. Frankie found his voice. Mom, that's impossible. You don't have that money. You mean the account you know about, but it's not the only one I have. What do you mean? I took out my wallet and showed Frankie the bank statement. His eyes moved back and forth, reading the numbers, trying to process what he was seeing. $2.4 million, he read aloud. This has to be a mistake. It's not a mistake. It's my sister Esther's inheritance, plus the investments I made with that money over the last 5 years. Aunt Esther's inheritance? Isabella seemed to be hyperventilating. But you said she only left you old furniture. I lied. Frankie approached me with that desperate look he had when he was a child and had done something wrong. Mom, this is fantastic. It means we can buy a better house for everyone. A big house where we can live comfortably. Everyone? Yeah, Mom, the family. We can move into a new house together. No. What do you mean, no? I'm not going to buy a house for you, Frankie. I'm going to buy a house for me. Isabella stepped forward with fake tears in her eyes. Eleanor, we're family. You can't abandon us like this. Family. The word came out with a bitterness that surprised even myself. Family is breaking my phone on my birthday. Family is calling the police. Family is signing false reports. Mom, we already apologized for that. Family is planning to institutionalize me in a retirement home without my consent. Family is planning to sell my house. Family is telling people I'm losing my mind. Frankie and Isabella exchanged panicked looks. They knew I had caught them. Mom, can we explain all that? You don't need to explain anything. I have recordings of all your conversations. That's illegal, Isabella screamed at me. Not when it's recorded in my own house. Antonio cleared his throat uncomfortably. Mrs. Eleanor, would you like to postpone the visit to the house? Not at all, Antonio. Let's go right now. As I walked toward the exit of the real estate agency, I heard Frankie yelling at me from behind. Mom, you can't do this. You're our mother. You have obligations to the family. I turned around one last time to look at him. My only obligation now is to myself. And I walked out of there with my head held high, leaving them with their desperation and their ruined plans. The house I bought was even more beautiful than I had imagined. 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, a garden with a pool, and the kitchen of my dreams. I paid for it in cash, without financing, just to prove to myself that I could do it. Frankie and Isabella didn't take long to find my new address. A week after I moved, they appeared at my door with the kids in suitcases again. Mom, we've come to live with you, Frankie announced, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. This house is beautiful, Isabella said, pushing the children inside without waiting for an invitation. The kids are going to be so happy here. Stop right there, I said, blocking the entrance. No one invited you in. We're family, Mom. We don't need an invitation. After what you did to me, you definitely need an invitation, and you don't have one. Frankie tried to gently push me aside to get in. Mom, don't be ridiculous. This house is clearly too big for you alone. You need company. What I need is peace. Isabella came closer with that fake smile I knew so well. Eleanor, we understand you're upset, but it's time to let go of the resentments. The kids need stability. The kids aren't my responsibility. You're their grandmother. I'm the grandmother you wanted to institutionalize in a retirement home. Frankie changed tactics. He put on that face of a repentant child he used when he wanted to manipulate me. Mom, we made mistakes. We admit it, but now we can start over in this beautiful house as a united family. A united family? I repeated with sarcasm. Like when you filed a false police report. Mom, that's in the past. No, Frankie, that doesn't pass. That is remembered forever. Isabella lost her patience. Look, Eleanor, we understand you have money now, but that doesn't change the fact that we're your family. You can't buy love. You're right, Isabella. I can't buy love. But I'm also not going to keep giving it away to those who don't deserve it. What do you mean by that? I took out my phone and played one of the recordings I had saved. It was the conversation where Frankie told his friends that I was losing my mind and that they would soon institutionalize me. Their faces turned pale as they listened to their own voices, planning my future without consulting me. How did you get that? Frankie murmured. I have many more. Do you want to listen to the conversation where Isabella says I'm a burden, or the one where she says you're going to sell my house to pay your debts? Isabella took a step back. That was taken out of context. What context can justify you planning to get rid of me? Frankie tried to approach me, but I stood firm at the door. Mom, we all say things when we're stressed. We didn't mean it. Oh, yes, you did. So much so that you had but already chosen the retirement home. The children were crying, confused by the tension. Isabella took their hands with drama. Look what you're doing, Eleanor. You're traumatizing the children. The children are traumatized because their parents don't know how to behave like adults. Okay, Frankie said, taking a deep breath. We understand you're upset, but we're family. Family forgives. Family also respects, and you lost my respect forever. Mom, without us, you'll be lonely. I'd rather be lonely than in bad company. Isabella exploded. You're a selfish old woman after all Frankie did for you. All Frankie did for me? I laughed bitterly. Are you referring to breaking my phone? To calling the police? To planning to institutionalize me? I'm referring to taking care of you, to worrying about you, to coming to visit you. Coming to visit me to plan how to get rid of me? Frankie tried one last strategy. Mom, if you don't let us stay, we're going to have to live on the street. We were evicted from the apartment. That's not my problem. We're your family. No, a family doesn't do what you did to me. Isabella approached with crocodile tears. Eleanor, please. The children aren't to blame for anything. You're right. The children aren't to blame. But it's also not my responsibility to fix the problems you created. So what? Are you going to leave us on the street? You're going to do what all responsible adults do. You're going to look for a job. You're going to rent a place you can afford. You're going to live within your means. Frankie looked at me with a mixture of disbelief and rage. I can't believe you're so cruel. Cruel? I'm cruel? After everything you did to me? We're asking for your help. You're not asking. You're demanding that I maintain the same old pattern. that I sacrifice myself to solve your problems. You're our mother. I am a woman who deserves respect, and until you understand that, there's nothing more to talk about. I closed the door in their faces and stayed on the other side, listening to them yell and try to convince me to open it. Mom, this isn't going to end here, Frankie yelled. We're going to talk to a lawyer. You can't abandon your family. We're going to sue you for abandonment, Isabella added. You have legal obligations to us? Their screams gradually faded. From the window, I watched them get into the car and drive away. Frankie was driving furiously, gesticulating and yelling at Isabella. That night, I called Carlos to tell him what had happened. It was to be expected, he said. Now that they know you have money, they're going to try everything to get it. Can they really sue me? They have no legal basis. You are an independent, elderly adult, in full use of your mental faculties. You have no legal obligation to support your adult son or his family. And if they try to say you have mental problems, we have the recordings that show they're the ones who planned everything. Besides, your behavior during the house purchase shows you're perfectly sane. What do you think they're going to do now? They're going to try to manipulate public opinion. They're probably going to say you're an unnatural mother who abandoned her family. Prepare yourself for that. Carlos was right. What I didn't know was how far they were willing to go. 2 days after the confrontation at my new house, Carlos called me with disturbing news. Eleanor, Frankie and Isabella have started a social media campaign. They're saying, you're an unnatural mother who abandoned her family. Seriously, they uploaded a video to Facebook where Isabella cries and tells how you kicked them out of your new house. She says her children are traumatized because their grandmother rejected them. I felt as if I had been punched in the stomach. After everything they had done to me, they were now painting me as the villain of the story. What else are they saying? Frankie made a very long post explaining how he sacrificed years of his life taking care of you, how he moved into your house to be with you in your old age, and how now that you inherited money from your sister, you abandon them as if they were trash. All lies. Of course it's a lie, but people don't know your version. They're only seeing their version. A lot of people are seeing it. The video already has more than 5,000 views and hundreds of comments. Most of them support Frankie and Isabella, saying you're a bad mother, that children are for life, that money corrupted you. I was silent, processing the information. Frankie and Isabella had decided to publicly destroy my reputation. Carlos, what can we do? We can fight back, but we need to be smart. Are you willing to tell your version publicly? Yes. It's time for people to know the truth. Then we need to create content that is more impactful than theirs. With the recordings you have, we can completely dismantle their narrative. That afternoon, Carlos helped me create my own social media profile. I had never used Facebook or Instagram, but it was time to learn. My first post was simple but powerful, a photo of me in my new house with a text that read, "At 64 years old, I discovered that sometimes the family you choose is better than the family you were given." In a few hours, I had hundreds of comments, some of support, others of criticism, but everyone wanted to know more about my story. Frankie didn't take long to respond. He did a live stream from his car, crying and saying that I had lost my mind since I inherited the money. "Mom's not the same anymore," he said with fake tears. "The money completely changed her. She kicked us out of her house as if we were strangers. Isabella is devastated. The kids ask for their grandmother every day." Isabella appeared in the live stream with red, swollen eyes. "Eleanor was like a second mother to me," she sobbed. "I don't understand how she can be so cruel. All we wanted was to be close to her to take care of her. The comments on their stream were devastating for me. What a horrible mother. How can she abandon her grandchildren? Money brings out the worst in people. Frankie, you should sue her for abandonment. That lady is clearly senile. That night, I couldn't sleep. Frankie and Isabella had managed to manipulate hundreds of people into hating me without knowing my side of the story. The next day, Carlos arrived at my house with a plan. It's time for you to do your own live stream, but this time with proof. Are you sure? Completely. The truth always wins, Eleanor. We just need to present it in the right way. We prepared everything carefully. I dressed elegantly. We made sure the video quality was perfect, and Carlos helped me organize all the recordings in chronological order. Remember, he told me before we started the stream, stay calm, present the facts, let the recordings speak for themselves. I started the stream at 8 o'clock at night, when more people would be connected. Good evening. My name is Eleanor. I am 64 years old, and I want to tell you the truth about what really happened with my Wanta Frankie and my daughter-in-law, Isabella. In the first few minutes, I only had a few people watching, but the number began to grow quickly. Carlos had invited several people from the community, and they were sharing the stream. For the last few months, I have been a victim of emotional abuse by my own family. Today, I am going to show you how my son and my daughter-in-law planned to get rid of me to keep my properties. I started by playing the recording from my birthday, where you could clearly hear Frankie yelling at me and then calling the police. The comments on the stream changed immediately. Oh my God, what a horrible son. I can't believe he yelled at his mother like that. Calling the police on your own mother is unforgivable. Then I played the conversation where Frankie told his friends that I was losing my mind and that they would soon institutionalize me. As you can hear, I told the camera, this was not filial love. It was a calculated plan to keep my belongings. Then I played the recording where Isabella talked about selling my house and looking for a cheap, faraway retirement home. This is what my daughter-in-law really thought of me, I explained. She wasn't a daughter who cared. She was a woman who wanted to get rid of a burden. The number of people watching the stream had reached more than 3,000. The comments were now completely different. Eleanor, you are a warrior. How brave you are to expose this publicly. Your son and daughter-in-law are manipulators. You did well to get away from that toxicity. Then I played the most damning conversation of all, Frankie talking on the phone about how they were already practically settled in my house, waiting for something to happen to me. The silence in the comments was total for a few seconds. Then they exploded. This is sociopathic. They were waiting for you to die. How can they be so cruel? Frankie should be in jail. By the end of the stream, I had more than 5,000 people watching. I ended with a clear message. At 64 years old, I have learned that true love does not manipulate, does not blackmail, does not abuse. I walked away from my son because I decided to value myself, and I have no regrets. The reaction after my live stream was overwhelming. In less than 24 hours, the video had been shared more than 10,000 times. The comments of support came in by the hundreds every hour. Eleanor, you are an inspiration to all older women. Thank you for teaching us that it's never too late to stand up for yourself. Your son should apologize on his knees. You are the mother we would all want to be when we are your age. But Frankie and Isabella's reaction was predictable. They did another live stream trying to discredit my recordings. Those recordings are edited, Frankie screamed in desperation. My mom manipulated them to sound bad. She's publicly defaming us. Isabella cried more dramatically than before. Eleanor is destroying us. She's taking away our jobs, our friends, everything, just because she didn't want to share her inheritance with the family. But it was too late. People had heard the complete recordings. There was no way to deny what their own voices had revealed. The comments on their new stream were brutal. No one believes you anymore. The recordings speak for themselves. Stop playing the victim. You are the abusers. Frankie, get a job and stop being a parasite to your mother. Isabella, you're a professional manipulator. 3 days later, Carlos brought me news that filled me with satisfaction. Frankie lost his job. He informed me with a smile. His boss saw the recordings and decided he didn't want employees who abused their elderly mothers. Seriously? And there's more. The landlord of the apartment where they lived before sued them for property damage. Apparently, they destroyed several things before they left. And Isabella also lost her part-time job at the store. The owner is an older woman who identified with you after seeing your stream. It was poetic justice. For months, they had tried to destroy my reputation and my self-esteem. Now they were experiencing the consequences of their own actions, but Frankie didn't give up. A week later, he appeared at my door again, but this time he came alone and with a completely different attitude. "Mom, I've come to ask for your forgiveness," he said with real tears. "This time I've been reflecting on everything that happened. You're right. I behaved like a monster." I looked at him through the gate of my new house without opening the door. "Where's Isabella?" "She left. She left me when we lost everything. She said she wasn't going to stay with a loser with no job or money." For a moment, I felt sorry for him, but I remembered all the nights I had cried because of him, and the pity vanished. "Frankie, it's very easy to ask for forgiveness when you have nothing left to gain." "No, Mom. I realized that I really hurt you, that I was a horrible son, that I treated you like garbage when you gave me everything." "Yes, you did. Could you forgive me? Could we try to fix our relationship?" I looked at him intently for a long moment. This was the son I had raised, whom I had loved unconditionally for 38 years. A part of me wanted to open that door and hug him, but another part, the part that had learned to value itself, knew I couldn't. "Frankie, forgiveness is a process. It's not something that can be forced or rushed." "I understand. But is there hope? Is there a possibility that one day you can forgive me?" "Maybe. But I would have to see real changes in you, not just words when you're desperate." "What kind of changes?" "Starting with taking responsibility for your own life, getting a job, supporting your children, becoming the man I thought you were." Frankie nodded. "I'm going to try, Mom. I'm going to prove that I can change." "I hope so, for your children's sake." He walked away with his head bowed, and I watched from the window as he got on a public bus. He no longer had a car. He no longer had the comfortable life he had tried to build at the expense of my suffering. 6 months later, Carlos visited me with news about Frankie. He got a job at a factory. He's living in a small apartment with the kids. Isabella hasn't come back. How is he with the children? According to what they tell me, he's being a better father. He treats them with more patience. He spends time with them, and he no longer yells at them. I'm glad to hear that. Have you thought about contacting him? Every day, but I'm not ready yet. Carlos understood. Time will tell if he really changed, or if he's just acting until he finds another opportunity. He was right. Time would be the only judge of whether Frankie had really learned his lesson. Meanwhile, I had started a new life. I joined a book club, took painting classes, and traveled to places I had always wanted to see. For the first time in decades, I was living for myself. One afternoon, while I was watering the flowers in my garden, I received a text message from Frankie. "Mom, I know you don't want to talk to me yet. I just wanted to tell you that I got a promotion at work. The kids are doing well, and every day I think about how much I hurt you. I love you." I didn't respond, but I saved the message. It was a small step toward redemption because I had learned something fundamental. True love is not begged, not demanded, not manipulated. It is earned with respect, with consistency, with actions that show the change is real. Frankie had lost everything to understand what really mattered. If he wanted to get my love back, he would have to prove it day by day, without pressure, without blackmail, without false tears. In the meantime, I had found something I didn't know I had lost: my own dignity. I didn't regret having adopted him when he was an orphan boy. I only regretted not having understood sooner that kindness should never be practiced at the expense of self-destruction. Now, at 64, I was finally free. The names and places in this story have been changed to protect the identities of those involved. We do not share this to judge, but in the hope that someone will pause and reflect on how many mothers are silently suffering within their own home. I truly wonder, if you were in my place, what would you do? Would you choose silence to preserve peace, or would you dare to confront everything in order to reclaim your voice? I long to hear your thoughts, because every story is like a candle that can light the path for someone else. I firmly believe that God always blesses, and that courage leads us toward brighter days. As we close, I leave you with two of the channel's most beloved stories. I am certain they will surprise and inspire you. Thank you for staying with me until this moment.